Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, authors, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. Today, we have another great episode in our CIO series with the CIO of denova Collaborative Health, Briana Brown. Briana, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to see when a hacker successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Briana, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about denova Collaborative Health and your role as CIO?
Yeah, absolutely. denova Collaborative Health is an integrated healthcare system. We have primary care, mental health, so we have psychiatry and behavioral health therapists. It's an amazing organization. I have enjoyed every second of being there. And I enjoy my team. I love being part of the technology team for denova.
That's fantastic. So at denova there, you guys have you have a number of different locations, right? Was it like 6 or so? What is it? It's
We do. We have several locations in the right around the Phoenix area, but we've also expanded. So now we have a new location in Tucson. We have Flagstaff. We are expanding into Yuma as well, which is very close to the border. That's way south in Arizona. I'm learning all the areas now. And we are very heavy in virtual health, which is actually one of the reasons that I kind of fell in love with the opportunity when I was talking to them through the interviews. I was speaking with the CEO, Graham Johnson. He's not your typical CEO. He gets it. He understands technology and he understands how to grow an organization. And the chief clinical officer, our chief administration officer, even our human resource officer, they understand people, but they understand technology. And going through the interview process, I listened to them talk about the pandemic, and the pandemic hit everybody hard, obviously. But a lot of healthcare organizations couldn't pivot because you suddenly had to go virtual. And that's a shift for patients and a shift for providers. But it's also a technology shift. That's such a security issue, thinking about how do we suddenly go from having a laptop in the room and dealing with a patient to suddenly I've got to be on video with you and figure this out. And denova did it well. They did it extremely well, and they actually grew their business through the pandemic. Right. And that sold me. I was like, okay, I'm done. When do I move to Phoenix? And it's been great ever since.
That's awesome. Well, I love the Phoenix area. I mean, I'm kind of in love with Scottsdale. It's fantastic. But I digress. I want to go back to to how you use technology. I know you weren't there during the pandemic necessarily, but as companies have kind of embraced that technology through the pandemic, and there's been all kinds of lessons learned in terms of working remotely, security, and how you kind of collaborate remotely. So let me ask you, now that you're kind of through that now, have you kind of moved more towards bringing patients, especially I guess on the mental health side? Do you bring them more in, are you working on bringing them into the office more, or is it more, let's keep this virtual? It seems to be working.
We leave both options open, but we are probably, and I'm going to get the math wrong. I didn't graduate in math, but probably 80% virtual still. And, and it just continues to grow. I think, the convenience for patients is there. I can step away and take a break from work and go to my car or go somewhere really quick and get on a Zoom call with my provider and get my session done and go right back to work. And people see that convenience factor. Now, that said, we still have a target audience or a section of our patients that still want to come into the location, which is why we continue to expand the brick and mortar as well. And that's doing well for us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, well, yeah, I mean, I guess for a lot of like the primary health stuff is that that's hard to do remotely. I mean, there's, anytime you're talking about blood, though, I guess if you're doing blood work, but there's just some stuff you gotta put hands on patients at some point, right? I mean, but not so much on the mental health side, which is nice. I kind of wonder though if I don't know. I guess it supports. I'm thinking that if you've got people who are, especially with the pandemic, there was so much of this kind of, I don't know, mental inertia, right? You're at home all the time. And so it kind of creates a bunch of, an object at rest stays at rest. So, kind of you get used to being at home. And then I think for everybody, I'm a big extrovert. My wife's a big extrovert, but even for us, when you're at home so much, you kind of tend to stay at home more. And so, and I know you're not like a healthcare provider, but since you're in that area, I'm wondering maybe it's come up. Is that something where people are experiencing it more that you're kind of dealing with, and the remote helps that people are now kind of stuck in? Is that something that's still happening? Out of curiosity.
I think there's some aspect of that. And, I think one telling sign, and part of it's just generational too, it's not just the pandemic, but, our digital patient experience. A lot of times patients don't want to pick up the phone and call somebody and talk through the process of scheduling an appointment and setting up their chart and doing all of these things. It's so much easier to just get online and put in my information and take a picture of my insurance card and schedule my visit, because I can look at the calendar on the provider site while I'm looking at my own personal calendar, and I can kind of juggle it, and I can set up my own healthcare. I can do what I need to do without having to talk to a human. And I think that's kind of the way things are really progressing. We still have a phone center, and those calls are up. Our volume is way up, but it's very digital now.
That's great. Well, I mean, I know that you weren't there for the setup, but I'm kind of curious, now that you're in the role and you do that. Are you guys looking to integrate, or do you currently integrate AI into any of that process, or I guess kind of at all? I mean, I guess that is the hot topic of the day, is AI, and I think rightfully so. But where are you guys, on the whole AI spectrum, if you will?
I think for AI, most healthcare organizations, and probably even in the financial industry, I think we're typically the ones that are a little hesitant to be on the edge of technology for the right reasons. There's a lot of sensitive information, sensitive data that's being exchanged there. The thing that I've noticed about where I am now, they're okay with exploring options, obviously weighing the risk and making sure that we're doing our due diligence, but they want to make things easier for their providers, easier for their patients. And that gives me a chance to really kind of empower my team to be innovative and challenge them to find new ways to do things. We just went into an agreement to change our electronic health record system, and we're starting down that project. And one of the conversations that continues to come up as we're moving into that project is AI, and how can this help us in this new system? What can we set up differently? What can we do differently? And it's anywhere from your chatbot to actually helping with documentation and notes and really helping providers be more effective. So
Well,
working on us.
well, I can't help but think, it's one thing on let's say the primary care side. That's one thing, and I think we all kind of see that coming, in various ways where it can help, AI can help diagnose things. We're already seeing it with things like brain scans and on the radiology side, and amazing things where a human just never would have, and just couldn't possibly have picked it up. And it's doing great stuff with, medical research, and fantastic. But now looking at you guys, thinking on that healthcare provider side, on the mental health side, using AI to, because I don't care how I don't know how diligent you are as a human being, if you're sitting there for 8 hours a day listening to people, it is really hard for a human to focus on a conversation for that long in, that in succession, and get all the notes and care and track it. That is a really challenging thing, on top of the emotional, toll that it takes, which is, it's real for the provider. So I kind of get excited about the use of AI there, where even if you use it's something like I don't know if you've seen this, like Plod.ai. It's this little device that will transcribe and read everything, and then uses, chat GPT to kind of transcribe it, summarize it. I can't help but think that would be phenomenal if I'm sitting there for 8 hours a day talking to people, and each patient I've got to, take down the notes and everything. Even on Zoom, being able to just have, or Teams, and have having the AI assistance to, oh, this is what was talked about, these are the takeaways, this is what that stuff is fantastic. So I can't help but think that's got to be a game changer for, for the mental health industry. Are you guys using that, exploring that? Is it something where, nope, for regulations you can't touch it? I don't know. What's the story there?
We are definitely exploring it. And we're thinking about it from a patient experience standpoint. Obviously we don't want our providers to burn out either. We want them to feel like they're productive and really getting through their day in the most effective, efficient way. But we're thinking about, on the patient side of it, think about TV for a minute. Everybody's seen it. The patient goes into their therapist's office, they're laying on the couch, and every time they say something, they see their therapist documenting. And so then you get paranoid, like, oh my God, what's the therapist documenting? And so then you're thinking about that instead of thinking about what it is that you're actually dealing with. Yeah. And so we think about that. We're like, okay, what would we want our patient experience to be? And one of the best examples that I can give is, I remember one time, I don't know, gosh, I'm not going to date myself, years ago. I went to an urgent care, went to see a brand new provider, somebody I've never seen before in my life. I'm nervous. I'm, upset about what's going on with me. And they say, I'll sit on the table, doctor will be right in with you. I get there. The doctor comes in, and they had just went into a new EHR. They just implemented a new EHR. And the doctor literally sat, and she didn't do it intentionally, but she sat with her back to me the entire visit so that she could document. And so she's looking at her computer and she's documenting over here. And I'm sitting on the table answering questions to a back. And I'm feeling scared, and I'm feeling alone. And all I can think is, why isn't she looking at me? And then, my IT hat comes on, and I'm like, they really built this workflow bad. Why is her computer over there? And, so then I'm starting to think through their process and their workflow. And that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about, if you're on a Zoom call, does your patient want you looking down the entire time?
Right.
If you're talking with somebody and you're having a therapy visit, does your patient want you looking down, writing the entire time? And that's what drives us. We want our patients to feel confident and comfortable coming to see us, and that's important.
I think that is such an important distinction between, successful businesses, like truly successful ones that kind of stand out, and ones that just kind of make it, kind of go along, and they make it, they're fine. And I think you see that think of any luxury hotel. The experience is always so kind of, customer, focused, right? I'm making it such a great experience. That is, whatever it is. Or you look at Amazon, where it's they're obsessed with the customer experience and making it easier and faster, and whatever's kind of best for them. So I think, hearing you say the same thing, I mean, it's so obvious, but you go into, I think everybody's had that experience where they go to the doctor, and it's just, it's not the best experience, and you get it. You understand that they're putting that stuff in, but that is not a great experience for the patient. And so it's great to hear that you guys are focused on that. And I think that's going to, serve you very, very well. And I think and I gotta ask, because I get that for, typically the IT people, well, they'll throw the computer in the corner because that's where the network drop is. And so
Yes.
that just makes sense, and bloop. And now their backs to the patient. Now I'm kind of curious because, of course, I think that everything starts from the top and comes down. So it's really up to leadership to kind of push those ideas of, customer first, kind of thinking. So is this something that has existed there at denova, or is this something where because of your background and how you came to IT, how you focus on things, and is it something that you're bringing in? Was it already how's that work?
I
Was
think
that
there's a, um, I've got to give a lot of credit to the leadership team there and the providers. They come with ideas, and not even just the providers. Our engagement center, our billing, all of our departments try to think of new ways to accomplish the same old task that everybody has to accomplish. And so I came into an environment that was very open, very willing to find new ways to do things. And I think that's empowered me to really push the envelope and go a little bit further. I've worked in organizations or in environments where, technology was kind of this, oh yeah, we know we have to think about technology, but we really don't like it. And all you do is spend our money.
Yep.
And I don't get that at denova. It's very much a collaborative approach to everything. And even if it's a people problem, the conversation that we have at the leadership table is it really just a people problem? Could we enhance it by changing the process? Could we enhance it by changing the technology or doing something different with the technology? So we think of it as a three-pronged environment. And it's kind of like that three-legged chair. If one leg is missing, the chair is going to fall apart. You can't sit in it. That's how we treat our organization. It's people, process, and technology, and that's how we solve our problems. So it's definitely a blend. I came into an environment that is conducive to making changes and putting technology in the environment.
I mean, I can't. I think that's just so well said, the people, process, and technology, because that's where the magic is. The magic isn't in the technology. Yeah, that it's magical. It's so cool. The stuff that we're doing today with technology is just, it is magical. It's so cool. But it's all for naught if you don't have it without people. And people and technology, if they don't have the right process, it doesn't matter. So all three of those things have to work really well together, not individually, in a collaborative way. Not to, I think the company's, well named, aptly named there. So that really works well. And I think every single company should be taking that away and being like, yeah, it's people, process, and technology. And it's unfortunate when they focus on, people, process, and maybe product, or maybe process and product and not people. You get any other combination, and it gets weird, right? You might make money, it might work, but it certainly doesn't create the sort of you know the environment that really functions at the highest level, because you simply can't. Going back to those companies that you were talking about, where they see technology as just kind of an expense, and the same with security for whether it's cybersecurity, they just see as, oh, this expense, it's just going to, and they see it kind of like, not even insurance policy that they just don't need. We've done fine for 20 years, we've never had a problem. Why should we invest in it now? I don't know, because you like your company, you want it to exist tomorrow. But it's changing that mindset is really, that's really hard. I don't know how, but I think if you get people, like you said, focus on people, process, and technology, well, they're not thinking like that anymore. They're not thinking, oh, that's just an expense. So going back to where you're at now, that people, process, and technology had been there while you were, when you got in there. That was kind of their thinking. Is that right?
I think so. I think, just even thinking about how they dealt with the pandemic and they were able to pivot, they really understood technology can enhance what we're doing. It's a continuous learning process. I think one thing I see, no matter what organization it is, you tend to have, unless you continue down the learning path of it's a three-pronged approach, you tend to have one of two situations. Either no, we don't want to invest in that because we'll just make do. A lot of times it's security that ends up kind of being the back burner. It's one of those, oh yeah, it could happen. The sky may fall, but it's probably not going to, so I'm not going to put my money there. And I think that happens with any kind of product solution. So that's one answer. And then you get the other side where people will come to IT and not come with a problem, but they'll come and say, oh, I need this product. I need this solution. Go buy this, and our lives will be amazing. So I think IT has to figure out the middle ground. Don't tell me no all the time, because sometimes we do need technology, but also don't come to me already deciding what you need. Instead, let's talk about your business problem, because I may actually be able to help you save money. I may actually help you find the exact product that's really going to help your business problem instead of the product you think you want. And I think that's the critical thinking that IT leadership has to kind of sift through.
Couldn't agree more. Now, is this the thing? So I like that all the CIOs that we've had on our podcast so far, they come from very diverse backgrounds. No two paths. I don't think we've had anybody with the same sort, even generally the same path. So do you think that your path to CIO and your path into IT, is that what helps make this such an obvious thing for you versus somebody who maybe came in, as a young kid? Like for me, I started in IT when I was like 12. By the time I was 13, I was writing, computer programs professionally. And that's just how I spent so for me, it was always like technology first. That was how I got into it. But then late, as I grew and learned more about business and everything, it obviously became much more about the people in the process, and the technology supports it. The technology is cool, but that doesn't make money on its own unless you're just kind of selling technology. So do you think it's because of your background? And I'd like to discuss your background, but do you think that's why you have that kind of that focus?
I definitely think so. I shared that my very first career job, so not your fast food high school kind of kid job, but my first career job was in industrial sales. I was an office manager and worked, I can drive a forklift and I can shrink wrap a pallet. I may take some practice now. It's been a few years, but I can do that. But I got a chance to learn there about just the processes that they went through and how could we make things better? How could we move faster? And that's, it was such a learning experience for me. And then I went from there and started my first healthcare job and worked in a wound care clinic at a small community hospital. Started learning there, and that's when I fell in love with patients. Working in a clinic was very intimate. I got to see the same patients coming in 2 or 3 times a week, and they became my family. And I just got to experience that journey for people. We'd stay late at nights. We were still a lot of our charts were still very much paper based. This was before the meaningful use era. I'm dating myself, but we would stay late at night going through charts and trying to do chart audits and looking at wound care pictures and trying to figure out how we made sure all of our charts were cleaned up. And this is paper, and we're sorting through all of this on the floor, going through charts. And I kept thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. This is painful. I shifted from there and went to work in the hospital, and I worked in revenue cycle. And shortly after I started that job there, we went through an EHR implementation. And that's when I fell in love with technology. I watched people struggle. The vendor that came in, reputable vendor, but every implementation has its challenges. And I saw the providers and the nurses struggling. And it was a huge learning curve. We were coming from, a green screen AS400 system to suddenly, this whole different implementation and a new way of looking at patient charts and treating patients. So it was huge. And I felt like there had to be more that I could do, that, watching the nurses struggle and get so stressed out over this, and the doctors upset and frustrated because they felt like they really couldn't treat their patient because they couldn't figure out the chart. And it was so stressful that it challenged me. It made me think, how can we do this better? And so for me, I surround myself with incredibly smart people like you who grew up in technology and know the ins and outs, the backs of it with their eyes closed. And I can probably muddle through it with you, but I think where I really add value and where my sweet spot is understanding people first and really critically thinking through the processes, and then figuring out how do we plug in technology to make all of this work a little bit better and make it easier for the people. I don't think I would have gotten that and been so strong in that aspect if I hadn't grown up in operations first.
That's fantastic. I can't help but think, that the people portion is so important, and kind of connecting with people, trying to understand, their struggle, their situation, what they need, and being able to just simply connect with people, whether you're, in operations, in sales, in IT, in leadership. That is such an important kind of skill to have, having those kind of people skills. And I'm kind of curious. I think it's something that technology, as great as it's been, as great as it is, for kids coming up where they're so ingrained in technology, and they don't, they didn't go outside and play with the other kids. There's less of that social interaction, and I think it does them a big disservice. And so I think it's really important that we start pushing kids to, you know, connect with human beings and build those people skills if you want to excel in life. I think it's such an important, that's crucial. I mean, I don't care what you do. Nobody does it alone. Not Bill Gates, not Steve Jobs, not, it doesn't matter. You name any leader anywhere, and they didn't build whatever they built, and they didn't get to where they are alone. Nobody can. And so it's with people. And I think technology, if left unchecked, people could just kind of go down that path, and then they become, it's one thing when you're just this uber geek that you keep in the dungeon, that you can't, in the basement, you can't let them out and they can't talk to other people, but they can do their thing. That's going away because of AI anyway. So they're going to that's going to go away, and it's always going to come down to people. So getting to a point here, because I think that's really, really important. Are you seeing that as a challenge for new people coming into IT, into business? The younger people, are they struggling with it, or are they kind of fixing that as they go through high school, college, and out into the world? Are you seeing that kind of fixing itself, and it's not really that big of a problem?
I don't know. I think I still see it as an issue, but I think and I'm going to touch on a subject that is so sensitive, and I see all the arguments back and forth on LinkedIn constantly. You have the argument of remote work, and I get it. I understand that, especially during the pandemic, it was so convenient to be able to work from home, and you get the arguments that, oh, I can still be a team player because I'm on Zoom, and all of these reasons why I should be able to stay at home. And from the waist down, I'm in my pajama pants, and the waist up, I look like I'm ready for business. I argue both ways, because there's a people aspect to being in person, and I don't see it as micromanagement. I think there are some companies that are like, oh, if I can't see you, I don't think you're working. That's not my perspective at all. If you're producing and you're successful and you're getting the things done that I want you to get done, that's what I care about. I don't care that you're sitting in front of your computer for 8.5 hours or 8 hours a day. That's not what I'm looking at. I want to make sure we're growing and we're successful. But the aspect of being in person, you can't get that through Zoom or Teams or chat messages. And I mean, yeah, you can, at a surface level, have fun and smile and call you my work buddy. But there's something different about being in a work environment, side by side with your colleagues, and powering through a brainstorming session, or having a team potluck, or being able to tap the person at the desk beside you and be like, hey, have you ever seen this problem before? I don't even know what I'm doing. Can you help me out? A whole different feeling if you're in person. And so I think, yes, you're right. Generationally, I think there's some challenges where kids growing up are just used to, I can do it on technology. I don't have to be face to face with you. But I think the pandemic just magnified that issue. And I struggle with the fights of, well, I should be able to work remote. I can do my job anywhere. Yeah, you can do your job anywhere, but do you really feel like you're part of a team? Do you really feel like when the chips are down, you want to give it your all because you're part of a team that you care about, that you're really focused on being successful? And so, I personally think a hybrid model is the best solution. I think, being able to work remote and knock out a whole bunch of work and be extremely productive in your pajamas, awesome. But I also think being able to come into the office a couple of days a week, or ever so often, whatever that frequency is, you can't replace that. And that's the people aspect of this.
Well, that's an interesting one because I mean, I think that's really well said on both sides. And then that kind of team building experience of being in person, is that, I'm just trying to think like of the younger generation who, all kind of automatically, I think we are from, you know, we didn't we grew up in a generation in a time where it was about the kind of the team and having a purpose. And I think I think that's really important, period, right? So I'm an old army guy, and I think that's that is just kind of having a mission is paramount. Like if there's no mission, I don't care whether you're making, if you're making rubber gloves, or, great, because they can, you could either be a factory worker making rubber gloves and nobody gives a crap because I just make rubber gloves and ugh, my life, I just do it so that I can live for the weekend, right? True, but what if those rubber gloves are saving lives? Now, if management is always talking about how we're saving lives, we're making it to where, and you are, right? Those rubber gloves are paramount to surgeries, to you name it, to preventing tons and tons of, you're saving lives. So that's a leadership thing where you're communicating the mission. If you don't communicate the mission properly, you have factory workers who are just dying, they're just, it's no fun, right? But on the other hand, you get people who go in and they're making the rubber gloves and they feel like they are saving lives. There's a huge difference between those two. Same job, but
Yeah.
how it was communicated and that your perspective shift is so important. So now I have to wonder, with the younger generation, where they naturally are less bonded with a job and less bonded with a company. I'm curious if it is because a lot of companies don't do a great job communicating the mission. I think those that do, and they're like, whether it's saving lives or whatever, but I think a lot of kids come in a little jaded or cynical, no, a little detached from the company, in that they see it as, I'm doing work to get the money to live my life because I want to live my best life, and I don't want my life to be spent at work. Whereas I think our parents, their focus was, you work, that's what you do because you love your family, you work and you make that money so you can. And so they became very bonded with and then we fall into this in between, where and then the kids. So we're in like the middle of this spectrum of, we've seen like an entire generation above us who were like kind of consumed by it, and then the kids who are not at all. I think we're the balanced ones, where everybody thinks they're the right. I think we see what's going on here. But I think it's interesting. So if you apply that whole remote thing to now, you've got this psychology of, if they're not tied into the mission, then, well, yeah, you won't. Then is it that when they go into work, the bonding they get with their team helps them stay there and work harder? But could that all be avoided? And is it unnecessary if you communicate the vision and the mission and the importance of it? And now people are bonded to the mission. I'll do that from anywhere. I come into the office, they do it at home. But now I'm driven by this really cool mission. I wake up every day. I've got this cool mission. We're doing this great stuff. I'm not going to a job. I'm going to save lives. I'm going to, for us, we protect, our nation's companies from enemies. They're coming after our clients' money, their business. They're attacking them. So every day we're defending them, and at the same time, we're their therapists when when they're having problems, and their technologies, and we're there. We help make their life easier. So we have these really cool missions, and everybody's like, "Yeah, the mission. I don't care where they're at." But I say that because at the same time, we're all remote, and so it's interesting to think, if we had that in person, is it that team building? There is that aspect that you simply can't get, as you said, on a team. But I wonder if that is just kind of a band-aid for the lack of mission. You guys have a great mission. There's no getting around that, right? Like, it's an obvious mission, right? It's like in the thing. But I think even at that, do you feel that that has to be communicated? Look at me, I'm just going off on my own little rant. Like, sorry, it's your interview and I'm here going up. But you hit such an interesting point that I could just go off for days. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it a band-aid, or is it like, no, you still need that team bonding?
I think it's a couple of different things. And I love the perspective that you just brought to it, because I agree with it too. That's why I said I never weigh in when I see people arguing one way or the other. I don't weigh in because I'm torn in so many different directions on remote work, hybrid. And again, let me be really clear. It's not about micromanaging to me. It's about people. But you hit on a really good point. I think there's a few different things. One, you can be attached to the team and feel really that camaraderie, and I'm all for my team. What you hit on, I think, is slightly different, but just as important, if not maybe more important. I believe in the mission, and that's not necessarily I'm glued to my team. They're my family. I'm here at the shoulder with them, working with them. But now you're talking about I'm supporting the business's mission, and I agree with you. I think if you're 100% remote, if you can't get that team camaraderie, then you have to have the mission, loyalty, the passion for that. One or the other's got to be there, or there's no. You can do your job, but there's no passion to it. I'm not going to wake up Monday morning excited to go to work because I'm just doing a job and getting a paycheck. I think for me, and all of technology is so easy, and I see it often with some of the vendors that I work with. They forget that they're impacting lives. They feel like, well, I'm just, I'm plugging away on a computer, or I'm blocking firewalls, or I'm, setting up a new laptop or a new network, or I'm doing these things. But it doesn't really mean anything. I'm just doing my job because somebody told me to do it, or somebody asked me to do it. For me, and I tend to get on my soapbox. I think my team and my colleagues, and probably some of the vendors that I have back and forth with, they're tired of my soapbox. But I remind people on a regular basis, you're not just turning on a computer. You're not just configuring a template. You're not just doing these things. You're actually helping your mother be seen in a provider visit. You're helping your daughter get an EKG done. You're helping your son be seen in the ER. These are the lives that you're actually impacting, that you're changing on a daily basis. And imagine that your father on the operating table and suddenly the surgery system goes down. How do you feel? And that's what I try to convey to people. I had a call recently with a vendor, and the response was, oh, yeah, the voicemail's not working, but it's okay. We'll work on it. Okay, well, let me help you understand what that means.
That's right.
And I'm like, how would you feel if it was your mother calling in and she couldn't leave a voicemail, and she's desperate and it's Thanksgiving and she feels like she has nobody to help her? Suddenly you could see, and we're on the teams, and you can see the vendor go, oh, okay, we're going to work on this. I'm going to go and talk to the developers, and we're going to really try to fix this. And so I think I agree with you. And again, I know I sound wishy-washy and I'm like the
No.
least indecisive person in the world, but I agree. If you've got a passion for the mission, being 100% remote is still going to be effective. It's still going to work.
I think that is your ability to see both sides is and appreciate both sides of something. I think is fleeting in today's day and age. Everybody wants to be, pro or anti whatever it is, and you're either for or against it. You're the enemy or you're not, and it's like, and everybody wants to be so polarized. When did we start living in a black and white world? What, like, are you kidding me? We can't even agree on what color something is. Like, that is how colorful our world is. And you want to polarize things and say it's black or white. I don't think there is a clear answer to anything, let alone, so I appreciate you being able to sit there and be like, I can see both sides of this. They both have advantage. But there is not a one size fits all of, a right and a wrong. So kudos to you for being able to just accept that and be like, yep, but yet some people want to get online and they want just to argue and argue that this is the best thing since it may be the best thing since sliced bread, but it's not for everybody in every situation. And the other side is not the enemy just because they don't agree with you. And this is what they think is best for them. So I think we could all be a lot better off if everybody, could appreciate both sides like you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, listen, this has been fantastic, and I could do this all day. I think this was a wonderful conversation. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about denova?
Yeah, absolutely. denova has a presence on LinkedIn. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Our website is denova.com. Very easy. And it's DEN as in Nancy, OVA. And then for me, I'm Briana Brown. I'm on LinkedIn. Please connect with me, reach out to me, ask any questions. I love to talk about people and process and technology, so I'm here.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on today, Briana.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.